This is devotional number 172, and today's date is November 15th, 2016. This week we're actually attempting to do a word study, a Greek word study, using Strong's Concordance, and the word that we're looking at is Strong's number 96, which is the Greek word adokimos, and it's translated three ways: cast away, reprobate or reprobates, and rejected. And there are actually 8 verses that contain this Greek word that is rendered by these 3 English words. And Lord willing, over the next 4 lessons or so, including today, we want to try to attempt to discover the spiritual or parabolic meaning of this particular word. And let me just read the 8 verses where they appear. The first is Romans 1:28. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient. 1 Corinthians 9:26 says, "But I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway." Also 2 Corinthians 5 through 7 states, and here it's repeated 3 times, "Examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith. Prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves how that Jesus Christ is in you, except ye be reprobates?" Verse 6, "But I trust that ye shall know that we are not reprobates." Verse 7, "Now I pray to God that ye do no evil, not that we should appear approved, but that ye should do that which is honest, though we be as reprobates." Also 2 Timothy 3:8 warns, "Now as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds, reprobate concerning the faith." Titus 1:16 states, "They profess that they know God, but in works they deny him, being abominable and disobedient, and unto every good work reprobate." And lastly, Hebrews 6:8 declares, "But that which beareth thorns and briars is rejected, and is nigh unto cursing, whose end is to be burned." We want to start by looking at Romans 1:28, the first verse, in a little more detail. And could it be that God would open our spiritual eyes to His truth as we do this in these next few lessons, as Psalm 119:18 instructs us? "Open thou mine eyes, that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law." Romans 1:28 says, "And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient." Since this verse is found within the immediate context of Romans chapter 1, we need to consider it in that light, and as we shall see, in the light of the entire Bible. But let's first consider the context of verses 18 to 32. "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them. For God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that, when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and four-footed beasts, and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature or creation more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves the recompense of their error, which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who, knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. A few things concerning this immediate context that we can touch upon. One, as in verse 18, we see that the wrath of God is in view. In verses 19 to 20, we learn that mankind is without excuse as he sees God's eternal power and Godhead demonstrated in the world around him. In verses 21 to 22, we see man's ingratitude and unwillingness to glorify God, a manifestation of his spiritual deadness and depravity, beginning with our first parents, Adam and Eve. Verse 23 chronicles man's wickedness in changing the glory of God and debasing it to the level of sinful man and other creatures which man seeks to ignorantly worship. In verse 24, God speaks of giving people up to uncleanness, leading to every imaginable or unimaginable lust of the flesh at the expense of defiling their bodies. In verse 25, we learn that man has changed the truth of God into the lie of Satan, leading to creature worship rather than the worship of the true and living God. In verse 26, we learn that God gave them up unto vile affections, highlighting man's evil inclination to delve into all manner of sexual perversion. In verse 27, God pinpoints the sin of homosexuality and lesbianism. In verse 28, we learn that God gives people over to a reprobate mind. This verse contains our word adokimos as reprobate, and incidentally, the Greek word that is used in verses 24, 26, and 28 as give up or give over is Strong's number 3860, And I mention that because we see it repeated 3 times in this passage, highlighting the purpose of God, especially now as we are in this prolonged day of judgment. Verses 29 through 31, God lists 24 sins. And finally, in verse 32, God makes the point that mankind knows he deserves to be damned or annihilated, but because of his sin, nonetheless, he persists in his sin, and he also delights in the fact that others persist in their sin as well. Now, of course, this list is by no means exhaustive. We have merely scratched the surface of this chapter, because actually every word in the immediate context surrounding Romans 1:28 has rich spiritual significance. I'll read the verse again. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient. Lord willing, in our next lesson, we will investigate the word mind that we find in this verse, Strong's number 3563, to discover, hopefully, the spiritual meaning or part of the spiritual meaning that is incorporated in this word reprobate or adokimos.